Hi, everybody. It's so good to see you. I feel like we haven't been in contact via video for far too long. Some of you have been calling me or reaching out over email, and I love that. I love being able to actually converse with you. Today, what I'm going to talk about, are two assignments. So, as you'll see in your schedule for this week, we're talking about your application assignment, which you've already done one, and this week I want you to do a second one of those. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Workplace Diversity Plan, which is not due until April 24th. So what I'm envisioning is you watch this short video, let it kind of wash over you today, while you're probably in work mode, maybe spring break mode, just like I am. Check out these are my real glasses. I have a migraine, so I'm wearing these. I know they're enormous. And I'm in my comfy clothes. You probably are too, I hope. But anyway, you can kind of let it wash over you. A lot of the things that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to spend the majority of the time talking about the Workplace Diversity Plan, but most of the advice I'm going to give is good for the second application paper too. So you let this wash over you, and then I imagine you won't actually dig into work on that Workplace Diversity Plan until later. But you might make a couple notes now about ideas you might have it in the back of your brain as you move through the next couple weeks of material. And we move toward the end of the semester, if you can believe it. So, again, what I want to do today is I want to talk about both of those things and give you some helpful tidbits. When you look at this week's module, you're going to see that I have put all of the assignments back up there, and I made a couple of cleanups to just some grammatical things on your rubric for the application paper. But then I also just tightened the instructions on the Workplace Diversity Plan from what I originally posted. I went through that with clean eyes and just thought, okay, if I were a student, how would this be most useful to me, this document? As you'll see with both of these, and you remember from the application papers, you have a lot of freedom in terms of what you choose to cover in terms of the course material and how you choose to use that course material. And that freedom can be a really great thing, a really empowering thing, but can also be a little bit like, ugh, because you really want to sit and think and plan before you dig in. Okay, so there comes my first piece of advice. So let's talk about application paper number 2. You've done one application paper. The assignment description is exactly the same as the first application paper. In the second application paper, you want to do all of those things that I asked you to do the first round. So look back at your first application paper, see how you did, see what you were comfortable with, uncomfortable with, see if you want to ask me any questions, et cetera, about how you were graded. I don't want any confusion there, okay, about what I expect of you. So it's the same requirement, same thing that you'll want to do. And I have just a few pieces of advice. I apologize if I'm belaboring the point. Some of these I've talked to you about one-on-one or written in your on your papers. I highly suggest that you pick topics, theories, areas of research, realms that we spend a good bit of time on in class. What happens is sometimes these chapters, I love them, but they can splice in little bits and pieces as opposed to big chunks. So when we talked about gender and Palomares and his research about making gender identity salient, that was a pretty big chunk. There's a big chunk about it in the chapter, and then I'm talking a lot about gender and gender salience. So that would be a nice meaty thing for you to cover. But there are other times where they'll plop in a research finding here or plop in even a theory. They might talk about terror management theory for 2 sentences. And I love terror management theory. It's a great theory, but I didn't spend a lot of time talking about it because there just wasn't enough time to get to other important things. If you wanted to bring in terror management theory, you sure could. And you could even look up other pieces on it. You could even ask me for some tips. I'll send you some great research on that cool theory. But it's going to be harder for you. You're going to have to do a lot more work to do that really well just because we didn't spend a lot of time on it in class. So again, I'm not saying that you can't cover things that we spent very little time on. I mean, you could even pull in things from other comm classes you've had, other classes. Don't censor knowledge. I just feel strongly, based on the data I'm seeing of your papers and what people are covering, that you're going to have an easier time if you cover things we spent a lot of time on. So think about that as you are planning. I highly suggest that when you write application paper number 2, you map everything out first. It would also behoove you to not worry so much about following the chronological order of your experiences that you're covering. What's more important to me is that you're covering things about your experience that match up with the literature. Okay, so while sometimes chronological order is important, for instance, you first met someone at work and you were prejudiced against them, and then 2 months later you're best friends. Okay, yeah, keep that in time order. That obviously makes sense. But giving me every single event that happened in your friendship in chronological order may not be so important, right? Pick and choose how you want to talk about the event in a way that best helps you to demonstrate that you understand the material and that you can apply it. Overall, most people tend to rock that first part of the rubric where I'm asking you, or second part where I'm asking you about the details of the event, the details of experience. That tends to be an excellent for most people because that happened to you, and so you explain it in this great depth. But what I really am interested in knowing is, do you get the material? And so whenever in doubt, err on the side of caution there and just really amp up your understanding. Even if you're saying a bunch of, as was described in class, as Dr. Rittenauer said in her lecture, as she summarized, as the bias map shows, any of that stuff. Okay, here's another tip. In terms of referencing things, I love that many, if not all of you, are paying close attention to referencing things appropriately so that you're giving scholars credit. When you talk about the bias map, you might talk about Cuddy and Fisk and those great researchers. Okay, that is really great, and I love for you to try and do that. Also, when you note the authors of your chapters, or when you note something that I said, and some of you are really great at quoting me, by the way. Appreciate that. I think you make me sound better than I really sound in these videos when I'm ranting. But at any rate, I do appreciate that. But if you look at your rubric, you'll note that I'm not a real stickler. And some of my colleagues might get upset with me. I'm not a real stickler for these sorts of things. And the reason for that is I'm trying to get you what I feel are the most important things that we can draw from for diversity in the workplace given strong intergroup theory and diversity literature. And so while in other classes you might read a piece by a particular author or study and then follow up on it, another study, and these are big, chunky, separate things that you can easily APA style, yada yada, draw from this piece, draw from that piece. It's just not like that in here. And while those things are important, it's important for you to give people credit or not say that you're saying the things that, Howie Giles said in his edited volume, or that I say in lecture. You're not passing that off as your own thought. Those things are important, but the APA style issue, that's minutia that should come at the end of all of this. And so you're not going to lose points if you're saying things like the bias map shows, as opposed to giving the full citation like it is on that Word document you filled out when you took notes. Okay, if you have a specific question about that, surely let me know. But I'm hopeful that you'll do the bigger things first and not worry too much about those other things that can pull you away from the important stuff you're doing. Okay, so that's really all that I have to say about that second application assignment. Draw from your first assignment. Oh, I do have one more thing. I'm so sorry. So when you're doing the second application assignment, yes, it started right after your first application assignment, but it is perfectly acceptable for you to draw from course material that happened even at the very beginning of the semester. So if you want to draw from experiences and to really use the stuff that we're learning to explain this experience and make sense of it and demonstrate my knowledge, I need to pull from social identity theory, or I need to pull from some of the very basic intergroup to interpersonal continuum stuff, or the quadrants that we talked about on day one. I need to do that. I need to mention these things. Then do it. Of course, I don't want you to just copy and paste all the social identity theory stuff you did with application 1, put it in paper 2 and say, this is still going on. Or, say something like, just see paper 1 and then move on to your next topic. I don't want you to do that. But, make logical decisions here. I hate the term, but, use your common sense about, okay, I need to do a new paper here, but I need to do the best paper possible. And so I'm not going to forbid myself from drawing from first semester stuff, especially if it's stuff I haven't even talked about yet. Okay, but I want these to be new, fresh ideas. Again, so that when you're setting up a portfolio, you could have your application number 1, your application paper 2, and then your diversity plan. And people that would go through that would just learn so much through what you've learned and how you've applied it. Okay, so that is all I have to say about the application paper. Next, I want to talk for just a few minutes about the workplace diversity plan. Again, plan after you review the material. And you may also talk about concepts you talked about in the application paper. This assignment is quite different. But yeah, you can talk about surely, concepts. And some of those fundamental concepts, it's really hard to avoid talking about them. What I want you to do here and also in the application paper is pretend that I don't know the literature. Pretend that I, too, am new to this area. Don't assume things. Don't assume, when I say gender salience, she knows what that means. I do. I think I have a pretty good idea, but you need to pretend that I don't because you need to demonstrate your own knowledge of it. So it may help that with this particular assignment, you really are writing as if it's to your organization. Remember, it could be an organization that you were in the past, that you're in right now, or that you foresee yourself in. But see my little note about the last of those. That could be a little tricky. You just really have to be prepared. But if it's useful to you, rock that. Anyway, you're going to pretend, basically, that you're writing it for that organization. And later you can choose or not choose to do so. Write for that audience. Make sure that you're demonstrating your knowledge of the material in a way that would make sense to them and would make the material useful to them. You don't have to get super persuasive on me or on them. You don't have to do that. Because if you do a good job of demonstrating your knowledge of the material and why certain behaviors or processes would be useful to them for enhancing the role of diversity in their workplace, you're golden. That will persuade them. That information will be persuasive to them. Don't amp things up. Don't go into all those persuasive strategies. Do like slippery slope and jazz. Don't do any of those fallacies. Don't pull those things in. This isn't persuasion class. Demonstrate your knowledge, and that will be what will persuade people because this research is strong. It would give you a strong case to stand on. Okay, so you're going to pretend that I don't know the material. It would help to write like you're writing to the organization. At the same time, you are going to do a beginning section where you talk about the organization itself. Pretend perhaps that you are the consultant and you are summarizing what's important to know about that organization. Many of you have disclosed, for instance, that your workplace isn't diverse in the traditional sense of what diversity means to a lot of people. Race is usually what people think about, but maybe culture, religion, sexual orientation, even skin color. People a lot of times just look at color or all these other cues of difference. But we've talked about diversity in many different ways. That we could have different morals. We could have different communication patterns. That could be what's diverse about us. Maybe half the people at your work have a really aggressive style. Half are completely passive. Some are passive. Whatever it is, there's so many ways that diversity can take place. And maybe part of your job is even explaining that to your workplace. So get in there. Explain what needs to be explained about the workplace so that your plan makes a lot of sense. And I can't give you so many specifics about what I need there or want there because it depends on your organization. So make smart choices, and if you need to, give this to a friend to read, and ask them, do you understand the questions that you have? What questions do you have? What questions do you have about diversity theory and research? What questions do you have about my organization? You get it. Okay, then my next tip is keep in mind that the 3 suggestions that you make for this workplace could be very related. They could be connected to each other. That's a strong plan, Maybe they're even in a stepwise fashion. Maybe you want to pull from one of the models where it says first do this, then this, then this. However you want to do it. And certainly you're not constrained to just the 3. If you have a question, you say, Christy, I have 2 really elaborate steps, and that's how I want to do it. Okay, if that's what makes most sense given your plan, and that would be most useful to the organization, then do that. Perhaps talk to me about it and make sure that you're comfortable proceeding so you can proceed confidently. Maybe you have 4 steps. 3 is really kind of a magic number. People like the number 3. I like the number 3. But I am not glued to that. Okay? Don't force 3 if something else works better. Again, you can draw from earlier papers. My comments can certainly strengthen your work, but don't do this, pull up paper 1, do those things, organization. That wouldn't make sense, and I don't think that you would do that, and I hope you don't think that I'm belittling you or insulting you. You're all real smart, real capable people. And finally, see me with any questions. If you are unable to reach me at the office, I'm going to be traveling some this week for a conference, but in some ways that's a better time to get a hold of me because I don't have my 3 children with me the whole time, so evenings and things like that. So I'm actually going to post my cell phone number, and you should please contact me. If it's a bad time, I won't answer. Or I'll give you a quick text to say, I'm sorry, it's a bad time. I'll call you back later. It's my job to help you. I'm here. I want to help you. I want you to be successful. And I'm confident that you will be. Okay, so by the end of this week at 11:59, please submit that new application assignment. Any questions, throw them my way. And then next week, we'll jump back into talking about work-life spillover, and I'm going to ask you a little about your own families, which I'm so pumped about because I love studying families. I'm looking forward to that a lot. Okay, thank you so much.